Commander Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair, eyes fixed on the shifting patterns of strange energy that rippled across his console. The Vanguard, his research vessel, drifted silently near Proxima Centauri. Out here, beyond the familiar shipping lanes, there was only stillness, punctuated by the soft hum of machinery and the faint pulse of starlight against the hull. For 3 weeks, Jake had hunted these elusive signals, and each new reading confounded him more than the last. They weren't stellar flares. They weren't gravitational anomalies. And they certainly weren't anything listed in the Zephyrian Empire's sanitized scientific databases, the ones humans were permitted to read. A voice broke his concentration. "Commander, you'll want to see this," Dr. Lisa Carter called from across the deck. Lisa's tone carried something more than urgency. It carried dread. She was a xenobiologist by training, but in the long months of exile aboard the Vanguard, she had become the crew's covert eyes and ears, quietly intercepting Empire communications, a crime punishable by death. Jake rose from his chair and moved to her station. Lisa's face was pale as she turned the screen toward him. A single translated message glared back at them. Final Solution Protocol. Target, all human settlements. Timeline, 72 hours. Authorization, High Chancellor Vexer. For a long moment, Jake could only stare. His chest tightened. "Lisa, are you certain? Could the translation be wrong?" Her eyes, weary from a decade of studying alien linguistics, didn't waver. "I triple-checked. They're planning genocide. Every colony, every station, every ship. They want to erase us. All of us." This was not the first time the Zephyrian Empire had spoken of humanity as a pest. For 3 centuries they had ruled the galaxy, a coalition of species united not by compassion, but by fear. At the top of that hierarchy stood the reptilian Zephyrians, masters of cruelty and control. To them, humans were little more than insects who had spread too far, too fast. Humanity's expansion into dozens of star systems had been tolerated only because human labor was cheap and human scientists had a peculiar gift, the ability to reverse engineer alien technology in ways that sometimes surpassed the originals. That talent alone had bought the species another century of survival. But it had also made them resented. Now, the patience of the Empire had ended. Jake's fingers hovered above the comms interface. His training told him to stay silent, that to break protocol might expose them all. But survival left little room for hesitation. He transmitted a single coded message toward Admiral Ben Rogers, commander of what remained of the human fleet. "Empire plans genocide. All humans targeted. 72 hours. 3 star systems away, Admiral Rogers was reviewing patrol reports aboard the battleship Liberty when Jake's message reached him. Rogers was a Grang veteran, scarred from 3 decades of futile skirmishes against an enemy too vast, too entrenched, to ever truly wound. But the weight of this message was different. The Admiral didn't wait. He ordered every human ship under his command to return to their bases. He hoped, irrationally, desperately, that there was still time. There wasn't. When the signal came from High Chancellor Vexer, the attack began in a single synchronized moment across 42 human systems. There were no declarations of war, no demands for surrender. Only silence, followed by the release of a weapon beyond imagination. Not energy beams. Not missiles. Something worse. Clouds of microscopic machines, nanobots, drifted into the atmospheres of every human world. Each one was programmed with a single directive: seek human DNA, and annihilate it at the cellular level. On Earth, Captain Amy Brooks had been leading a training exercise when the sky turned an unnatural green. Within minutes, the cadets around her collapsed, their bodies shutting down as the machines unspooled their biology from within. 12 billion souls gone in 6 hours. Amy survived by chance, her squad reaching a sealed military bunker whose filtration systems, designed for chemical warfare, happened to keep out the nanobots. 43 survivors where once there had been billions. On Mars, engineer Sophie Grant lived only because she had been deep within a sealed mining facility when the storm came. In orbit around Jupiter, Dr. Ryan Cole's lab had been conducting a high-risk biocontainment test. When he emerged hours later, the corridors were silent. Only piles of clothing remained where human beings had once stood. The Empire had planned carefully. They had mapped every settlement, every habitat, every scattered outpost. They had prepared fleets near each world, disguised as routine patrols. The genocide was surgical, merciless, and absolute. Admiral Rogers tried to intervene, to marshal what ships he had left for the defense of Earth. But the Zephyrians were ready for that, too. His fleet met a wall of enemy warships 50 times their number. He watched as his vessels were torn apart one by one, powerless to stop the horror unfolding below. Within 72 hours, humanity's population plummeted from more than 50 billion to fewer than 50,000. The survivors were not warriors, not leaders. They were the overlooked, maintenance workers on forgotten mining rigs, researchers in sealed bunkers, scattered groups who had escaped extermination by pure accident. The Empire called it a solution. The Galactic Council applauded. The bird-like aviarians, long bitter that humans had improved their flight technology, cheered the extermination. The hive-minded species clicked in satisfaction that a breeding pest had been removed. Humanity was gone, declared Vexer. Erased from history. But history has a strange way of remembering. Commander Jake Morrison found himself standing before the ragged remnants of his people, survivors huddled in the cargo bay of a captured supply ship. Their faces were gaunt, exhausted, hollow. But their eyes burned with something the Zephyrians had miscalculated. "They think we're gone," Jake said quietly, his voice echoing through the cold chamber. "They think they've won. But they made one mistake. They left some of us alive. And for the rest of their lives, they'll regret it. This is just the beginning." In Part 2, we'll follow humanity's survivors as they adapt, discover what the Empire never intended them to know, and begin a war the galaxy could never predict. For 8 long years after the extermination, the galaxy believed humanity was dead. Dead in the numbers that mattered. Dead in the way history remembers. The Galactic Council recorded it as a necessary act of stabilization. Alien historians filed the event under the cleansing. Traders and diplomats spoke of humans in the past tense, as though they had been nothing more than a temporary species that had briefly flared before burning out. And for most of the universe, it was easy to believe. Humanity had always been small in the galactic order, scattered across fragile worlds and ships. Now, their cities were ash, their fleets dismantled, their DNA scrubbed from planets like dirt from polished marble. But the Council was wrong. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was hiding. Deep beneath the surface of Callisto, within a mining complex long abandoned by the Zephyrians, a group of 400 survivors gathered in silence. Their air recyclers were ancient, their rations meager. Every cough, every flickering light was a reminder that survival here was borrowed time. Amy Brooks, the young captain who had watched Earth die, became the reluctant leader of this hidden enclave. She was not chosen for her brilliance, but because when the skies turned green and death fell upon the planet, she had lived. That was the only qualification that mattered now, survival. "We are not many," she told the survivors in their first council. "But as long as one human breathes, humanity still exists. And if we exist, we endure." Her words were not a battle cry. They were not a promise of victory. They were a whisper against the weight of extinction, but it was enough. Scattered across the galaxy, other pockets of survivors lived in the shadows. On Mars, Sophie Grant and her team of engineers burrowed deeper into the rock, disguising their reactor emissions to appear like natural geothermal activity. In the asteroid belts, smugglers who had once traded with humans still sheltered fragments of the species, not out of kindness, but because human ingenuity had always been profitable. And in the black void between stars, Ryan Cole drifted in his derelict orbital lab, alive only because the Empire had forgotten he was there. They were isolated, starving, and fractured. They had no fleet, no armies, no governments. Humanity had been reduced to embers, but embers can ignite. The turning point came in the 5th year of exile. Sophie Grant's team unearthed something hidden deep within the Martian crust, an ancient alien facility, older than any Zephyrian record. Its technology was not Zephyrian, nor Aviar, nor Hive. It was something else entirely, a machine language unlike anything in galactic databases. The facility had slept for millennia, its systems dormant, waiting. And in the trembling hands of a starving human engineer, it awoke. At first, the discovery was treated with fear. No one knew what it was or what it might summon. But Ryan Cole, the biologist, saw patterns in its structure that reminded him of the nanobots the Zephyrians had unleashed. He realized something staggering: the very technology used to destroy humanity had not been invented by the Empire. It had been stolen. The weapon of extermination had not been theirs. It had been found. Repurposed. Rewritten. And now, through this facility, humans could learn its source. Over the next 3 years, the survivors worked in secret to decipher the alien code. Every breakthrough came at a cost. Power shortages left whole bunkers in darkness for days. 3 engineers died when a reactor overloaded, their bodies buried in silence beneath Martian dust. Food was rationed until children's ribs pressed like cages against their skin. But the work continued. Because in every line of alien code, there was a promise, a weapon greater than anything the Empire controlled. It was Jake Morrison who gave the effort its name. "We'll call it the Ghost Protocol," he said, staring at the half-deciphered schematics projected on the wall. "Because as far as the galaxy knows, we're already ghosts. And now we'll haunt them." When the Ghost Protocol was complete, it was not a fleet, not an army. It was something quieter. Something more human. The first creation was a swarm of adaptive nanobots, reverse-engineered from the Empire's own weapon but rewritten with human hands. These machines did not kill indiscriminately. They infiltrated. They listened. They could slip into Zephyrian databases, rewrite records, scramble communications. For the first time in history, humanity possessed a tool to turn invisibility into power. The second creation was a vessel, a ship unlike any other. Forged from stolen Zephyrian alloys and embedded with ghost technology, it carried no transponder, no recognizable design. To sensors, it appeared as background noise, a shadow in the void. When it launched from the Martian underbelly, its engines humming like a whisper, Amy Brooks christened it the Revenant. The first mission was not an attack. It was a test. Jake Morrison and a small crew guided the Revenant into the heart of a Zephyrian supply chain. Their target, a convoy carrying food and fuel for the Empire's outer colonies. The ghost swarm infiltrated the convoy's communication relays. Within minutes, the Zephyrians' navigation systems reported phantom attacks. Their escorts fired on each other, convinced they were under ambush. The supply ships scattered in panic. When the smoke cleared, the Revenant slipped silently among the wreckage, gathering what the survivors needed most: food, medicine, and hope. It was the first human victory since the genocide. Small. Invisible. But it lit a fire across the scattered enclaves of survivors. Over the next 2 years, whispers spread across the galaxy. Zephyrian convoys disappeared without trace. Entire fleets found their data corrupted beyond repair. Council archives showed records vanishing, rewritten to suggest logistical failures rather than sabotage. To the wider galaxy, it seemed the Empire was faltering under its own arrogance. To the survivors, it was the beginning of justice. Amy Brooks reminded them often, "This is not war. Not yet. If they knew we were alive, they would finish what they started. We do not fight for victory today. We fight for tomorrow." Her words became a creed, carried in secret by the scattered fragments of humanity. They were not soldiers. They were shadows. And in shadows, they endured. But shadows cannot remain hidden forever. In the 8th year after the genocide, the Galactic Council convened to address a growing crisis: the inexplicable failures in Zephyrian infrastructure, the sudden cracks in an empire once thought unshakable. Some whispered of rebellion among the slave species. Others suggested internal corruption. None dared to imagine the truth. Until one Harari delegate, a member of a reclusive race that rarely spoke, rose in the council chamber and uttered words that silenced the hall. Perhaps the humans did not die. In Part 3, the shadows break. Humanity steps from survival into open defiance. And the galaxy begins to understand what it means to awaken a species that has nothing left to lose. The Galactic Council chamber was built to inspire awe. Its ceiling arched like the inside of a great cathedral, lined with crystalline panels that reflected the light of 1,000 suns. Every wall pulsed with holographic banners of empire and law. Here, the fate of civilizations was meant to be decided with solemn authority. But on this day, silence ruled the chamber. The Harari delegate, tall and veiled in shifting robes, had spoken words no one expected to hear. Perhaps the humans did not die. The phrase hung in the air like a toxin. Counselors shifted uneasily. Some laughed nervously, waving away the notion as impossible. But others, particularly those from species who had once traded with humans, felt a chill pass through their bones. Because if the humans lived, it meant the Empire had failed. And if the Empire had failed, the balance of the galaxy itself had changed. For Amy Brooks, the rumors were not news. She and her people had already begun preparing for the inevitable, the moment the galaxy suspected the truth. The Revenant no longer struck only supply convoys. It struck messages, symbols, the things empires fear most. A Zephyrian war monument on Theta Prime was found defaced, its towering statue of victory reduced to molten slag. The symbol carved into the stone was not alien, but human, the crude, ancient letters of Earth's alphabet spelling a single word: remember. A prison colony where thousands of enslaved workers toiled was left unlocked. Its guards had vanished, their systems corrupted. On the walls of the barracks, written in ash, was a phrase that spread like wildfire across the underclass of the galaxy. You are not alone. Humanity endures. The Zephyrians reacted with fury. Fleets doubled their patrols. Colonies were scoured for hidden insurgents. Every unexplained accident was blamed on human sabotage. But the harder they searched, the less they found. Because humanity had learned the oldest lesson of survival: you don't meet strength with strength. You make strength useless. The Ghost Protocol allowed them to become whispers, to walk unseen in the corridors of power. While the Zephyrians flexed their might, the survivors dismantled that might piece by piece. Ryan Cole, once a biologist, now found himself working as a saboteur. His hands, which once spliced genomes, now spliced data streams. He infiltrated planetary archives and erased records of entire fleets, leaving commanders blind. Sophie Grant, who had once designed habitats for colonists, now redesigned entire orbital stations, so their reactors would quietly overload weeks after construction. Jake Morrison led operations on the ground. He preferred to leave symbols, messages, seeds of terror. To him, the war was psychological. They fear ghosts, he told his crew once. Good. Let's make them believe in monsters. But it was Amy Brooks who carried the heaviest burden. Leadership was not a choice, it was a weight that pressed against her chest every time she saw the faces of the children born in the hidden colonies. She could not promise them safety, only survival. And yet, somehow, they trusted her. When the first real opportunity for defiance came, she almost refused. It began with intercepted transmissions. The Empire was preparing a demonstration of power. On the ashes of Earth's orbit, they planned to unveil a new weapon, a fleet-wide command system designed to ensure no act of rebellion could escape detection. To the galaxy, it would be a symbol of dominance. To humanity, it would be the final erasure of their home. The Revenant's crew argued for action. "We can't let them desecrate Earth again," Morrison said. "If we do nothing, we admit we're already dead." Amy closed her eyes. She saw Earth burning, the green skies filled with death. She heard the screams that still haunted her sleep. And she understood. They would not wait in silence any longer. The operation became known among the survivors as the Night of Ashes. The Revenant emerged from the shadow of Jupiter, cloaked in silence. The fleet above Earth glittered like a crown of knives, Zephyrian warships aligned in perfect formation. Their command vessel, the Sovereign Dawn, pulsed with energy, ready to ignite the new system. But when the activation began, the ghost swarm struck. Invisible to sensors, they wormed their way into the command vessel's core. Lines of alien code twisted into chaos. Systems turned against themselves. What was meant to be a demonstration of unity became a display of collapse. One ship turned its guns upon another. Cruisers spun out of formation, colliding with their escorts. In the confusion, the Revenant moved like a shadow, cutting through the debris. It carried no heavy weapons, but it didn't need them. The ghost swarm amplified the chaos, feeding false signals, convincing the fleet it was under massive attack. In less than an hour, what should have been a symbol of Zephyrian might became a graveyard above Earth's orbit. When the smoke cleared, Amy ordered one final act. From the Revenant's hull, they broadcast a message on every frequency, every channel, every spectrum the fleet used. The voice was Amy's, raw and steady. "This is Captain Amy Brooks of Earth. Humanity lives. Humanity remembers. And to those who tried to erase us, we are coming." The broadcast lasted less than a minute before the Zephyrians scrambled to jam it. But it was too late. Across the galaxy, whispers turned to certainty. The humans had returned. For the Council, it was unthinkable. If even a fraction of humanity survived, it meant years of lies and propaganda had been shattered. And if humanity possessed the power to dismantle fleets in silence, then the Empire's supremacy was no longer assured. Slave races began to hope. Traders began to whisper. And in the shadows, the Harari watched with quiet interest, their strange eyes glimmering with knowledge they had not yet shared. Because they, more than anyone, understood a truth the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity was never weak. Humanity was patient. And patience, sharpened by grief, can become the sharpest weapon of all.